One is that many of them were introduced to our organization by their parents. We've been around for 120 years. We have copies of our magazine that I brought in, and if you'd like to pick one up on the way out the door, I would encourage you to do so. Because we've been around so long, it used to actually be a monthly magazine, even predating television. So they may have learned about us from their parents. Others know about us from our Catholic calendars. A number of the parishes here in the Diocese of Dallas do distribute our calendars. We'll ship more than 2.4 million calendars to thousands of parishes across the United States here in the coming weeks for 2026. In Dallas, we're still relatively unknown, so I thank you for this opportunity this morning. We did have the good fortune of 2 years ago in 2023 of honoring Cardinal Kevin Farrell. He came back from Rome and was the honoree at our first Dallas Spirit of Francis Award dinner in May of 2023 down at the Meyerson. So some of you may have known us from that wonderful evening, and we're very grateful for Cardinal Farrell for coming back to Dallas and helping spread the word of Catholic Extension Society to people here. We were founded in 1905 really to help the Catholic Church expand into the western part of the United States. We are a papal society, meaning that we have a special connection to the church in Rome. Our president, Father Jack Wall, is a Vatican appointment, and he has served in that role since 2007. In fact, I know there are a few people with Chicago ties in the room here today. He was the pastor at Old St. Patrick's Catholic Church in the West Loop of Chicago for 24 years and was known from taking that parish in the early 80s from about 4 parishioners up to about 4,000 when he left there in 2007. Another interesting thing about Father Wall, he's a great leader, a prolific fundraiser. He was here in Dallas a few weeks ago. I know some of you had a chance to meet him at the Park City Club in early November. But he's also from the same hometown as Pope Leo, Dalton, Illinois, on the south side of Chicago. They're about 10 years apart in age. Pope is actually younger than Father Wall by about 10 years. But they went to the same Catholic school and grew up in the same neighborhood. And Father Wall, had the good fortune of going to the conclave back in May. And because we put out a magazine, he was able to get press credentials, and we were taking video and sending that back out and pushing that out on social media to the people who follow us. And you can imagine his excitement when he learned that the new Pope was from his same hometown. So as Lawrence mentioned, our mission is to build up vibrant and transformative Catholic faith communities among the poor in some of the poorest regions and most isolated regions of our country. And what I'd like to do here over the next few minutes is share with you some stories about some things that I've had a chance to witness through my work with Catholic Extension. Not long after I went to work for the organization in 2019, I got a phone call and said, hey, you need to come with us to Carthage, Mississippi, in the Diocese of Jackson. And at that point, this was August 1st, 2019, there was a wide-scale immigration enforcement action that took place that day, and there were about 800 people arrested that day at some chicken processing plants in some very rural parts of Mississippi. And when we got there, what we learned is it was the first day of school in Mississippi for the public schools. There were a number of families where both the mother and the father worked in those plants. They were both detained, and kids were coming home that day to no parents. And you can imagine, many of these, most of them were immigrants. I went to St. Anne's Church in Carthage We were providing some funding for emergency supplies to be provided to these families that were facing family separation. And one of the mothers told us a story about how she didn't get detained, but their father did. And her 12-year-old boy came home from school that day, and he said, "Well, Mom, I'm not going to go to school tomorrow because I have to go out and get a job. I have to help support my friend." And there's just, so many stories like that. We support the Catholic Church only in the United States and the U.S. territory, so everything that we do is domestic. We have a lot going on in Puerto Rico right now. I'll touch on that here in a minute. As you well know, Puerto Rico has suffered multiple hurricanes and earthquakes going back from 2017 through 2020. There's a lot of work to rebuild the churches and schools there. In fact, about 600 Catholic churches and Catholic schools in Puerto Rico were damaged and still remain damaged to this day, and I'll tell you a little bit about how we're involved in that. The funding for Catholic Extension Society comes primarily from individual donors. We have about 15 to 20,000 people across the United States who provide support to fund our mission. In recent years, through a partnership with the Lilly Endowment, we've begun to bring pastors from affluent urban and suburban churches in metropolitan areas around the United States down to see our mission being in action in places like Brownsville, Texas, for example. And those pastors are often going back to their parishes and beginning to raise money. So we're starting to raise money through parishes, but that's relatively new. Most of our support does come from individual donors. We provide direct support to the bishops of 87 of the 195 American Catholic dioceses. As Lawrence mentioned, these 87 are ones that don't have enough wealth in the communities that they serve to sustain themselves, so they rely upon Catholic Extension to meet that funding gap. Those 87 dioceses, and we mentioned the ones that are in Texas, so 8 out of the 15 dioceses in Texas are supported by Catholic Extension, but those 87 serve about 15 million Catholics, and these are really places where the Catholic Church is growing. Went out also in that first year I was with the organization before the pandemic, went out to the Diocese of San Bernardino and went to a church that in Coachella, California. It's a farming community out there. Coachella is known for some other things too, as the young people will tell you. But they have 40,000 parishioners at one parish. And when they celebrated Mass, there were more people outside the church than inside the church. And we were one of many organizations, including some very generous people in the Palm Springs area that helped that church build a new church that now seats about 1,500 people. We have a long history with Bishop Burns. As you probably know, before he was the Bishop of the Diocese of Dallas, he was the Bishop of the Diocese of Juneau, Alaska, and he had a close relationship with us at the time he was in Juneau. Catholic Extension's Board of Governors, they're the ones that determine which dioceses we support. We do have some dioceses that actually graduate from our program. So, I think a good example would be the Diocese of Richmond. So, throughout many parts of the southern United States, the percentage of Catholics is very low, but in some of those areas, I know North Carolina is another example, where they were supported by us at one point, and now, as Catholics begin to relocate into those areas, some of those dioceses have graduated from our program. Even the Diocese of Dallas, which I think up until 1968 went from the border of Louisiana over to the border of New Mexico, was once supported by Catholic Extension Society. Our board is made up of 10 Catholic bishops and 10 lay people. Here in Dallas, Pete McKenna, who serves as the CEO for Baylor Scott and White, is a member of our board. We've supported all of Texas over our 120 years. Today, the diocese is in East Texas, West Texas, and along the U.S.-Mexico border receive funding from us. Bishop Seitz, who is familiar to many of you in the Diocese of El Paso, receives support. Now Bishop Kelly in the Diocese of Tyler. And while these dioceses are largely in remote parts of our country, as I mentioned, they represent areas where the church is really growing. So let me tell you a little bit about some of the things that we help support in the areas that receive funding from us. First, facilities. So helping build and rebuild churches. That's where we got our start. When we were established in 1905, we actually had chapel cars that would go out into places like Idaho, places Wyoming, Montana. There were no Catholic churches out there in the early part of the 20th century. These chapel cars were a way to bring the opportunity to celebrate Mass to people who had moved into those areas. So more than 13,500 church facilities have been built or repaired with support from Catholic Extension donors since 1905, including 2,000 here in Texas alone. Another area of focus is leadership development, including the education of seminarians. That's a big part of our mission. Each year, over 400 seminarians across the United States receive scholarships from Catholic Extension Society. And I did just a quick look at the Holy Trinity Seminary website, and 23 of the 70-some young men who are at Holy Trinity Seminary right now come from dioceses and parts of the country that we support. Diaconate formation, lay leadership, and young adult education is also a central part of our mission. We partner with the University of Dallas on a program called Mujeres Valiente to help empower and educate young Hispanic women to go back and be active participants in their parishes. And then there are hundreds of ministries across the 87 dioceses that rely on support from Catholic Extension donors, including many women religious. A hallmark program supported by Catholic Extension is what we call the U.S. Latin America Sisters Exchange Program. And since 2014, we've invited 100 women religious to come and minister in the United States for a 5-year period of time. And this is funded in a partnership between Catholic Extension and the Conrad Hilton Foundation. And they come and support immigrant communities, largely in farming parts of our country. We talk about Central California, Washington State, even parts of Michigan, where there are a lot of migrant farm workers that are there. They come for 5 years. They support these communities, and in exchange for their work, they earn a master's degree in leadership studies from St. Mary's University up in Minnesota. And it's been a beautiful program. I've gone to a few of the graduations, and just to listen to them, talk about this unique experience of growing up in Guatemala or Colombia or Mexico and having the opportunity to get a religious visa and come to the United States for 5 years and minister and receive an advanced education where they can go back. And some of them have gone back to their congregations in Central America and have taken major leadership roles in their congregations. So we build churches, we help educate church leaders, we support ministries, and collectively the financial impact on all three of those areas amounted to about $60 million in 2024. We were founded by priest Francis Clement Kelly in 1905 in Lapeer, Michigan, north of Detroit. And 1 year later, he was relocated the establishment of Catholic Extension, as you can imagine, was just kind of his side hustle at the time. So he was relocated to a church in Chicago. So Catholic Extension was moved there, and we have been headquartered there in all of those years except our first year of existence. So tell you a little bit more about our story to close here on what we've done here in Texas. In October, I went down to visit the La Lomita Mission, which is right on the banks of the Rio Grande in Hidalgo County, not far from McAllen. It's a beautiful, small, historic chapel that really represents the South Texas Catholic heritage. I think it was built in 1880. If you're ever in that area, I know it's out of the way, but I would encourage you to go. It's a mission church of Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mission, Texas, which is a community about 4 miles away. And we met Father Roy Snipes, and Father Snipes is one of those oblate priests that you were talking about. So they're still going strong. And this is a very small chapel, and he had the Catholic Extension group down there, and we had some of our priests from different cities around the country who were with us. And Father Snipes is known for his dogs sit on the altar with him during Mass. So that was interesting to see. And he had a little boombox behind him. He said, "This is the way, when we're at the La Lomita Mission Church, this is the way that we start Mass." And he turned on his boombox, and if you're familiar with Blue Shadows on the Trail, sung by Roy Rogers, we got to listen to that for the opening of Mass. We were also there in the Diocese of Brownsville to celebrate the opening of a new community center in Donna, Texas called Plaza Amistad. Plaza Amistad exists in a colonia that is the home to many of the farm workers who are in that part of South Texas. And with support from Catholic Extension donors, we were able to build a 10,000 square foot community center that is not only going to be their place of worship for some time, but will also provide medical care, counseling, a place where they can even go and clean their clothes and have laundry services. There's a gym for the kids and a lot of recreation facilities, and we hope that there will be a church on that land sometime soon. Another important part of the relationship between Catholic Extension and Texas, it can be traced to Uvalde, Texas. So the first two grants that we ever made in the first year of our founding, one went to establish that La Lomita Mission Church that I talked about. The other went to build Sacred Heart Church in Uvalde, Texas. And as all of you know, in May of 2022, there was a terrible tragedy at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde. And we, with the support of our donors, stepped up and were able to help 30 of the kids that were going to the public school move over to Sacred Heart Catholic School in the year. So that would have been August of 2022, and I can remember going down there, and it was very strange to go to Uvalde, Texas in August and see it raining heavily, but it was the first day of school. There was Mass there. These young kids were there. It was very quiet. It was kind of an awkward situation because it was really the first time that any of those children had been together as a group since the shooting at Robb Elementary. So we were able to provide not only scholarship funding for those kids to move over there, but also important counseling services that even to this day are still in motion. So all told, over the 120 years in today's dollars, our support to the Catholic Church in Texas totals about $175 million. Our biggest initiative at this point, I mentioned at the beginning, was in Puerto Rico. So In 2018, the Supreme Court ruled that houses of worship were eligible for FEMA funds. And there were 600 Catholic churches and schools in Puerto Rico that were damaged either by the hurricanes or by the earthquakes. So we helped mobilize the 6 dioceses in Puerto Rico to apply for FEMA funding, and it was a big job. And even though the Hurricane Maria happened in 2017, the shovel-ready projects to repair these churches and schools are just happening right now. So it's 8 years later. But FEMA stepped up, and they have obligated $400 million to help rebuild the churches. And then the way it works is FEMA pays for 90% of it, so the churches have to pay for 10% of it. These churches are really poor. And most of them, just let's say they have a $100,000 project, the prospects of them being able to raise $10,000 on their own are difficult. So we're mobilizing donors in the continental United States to come and support that 10%. But these projects are beginning to happen now, but it'll probably be about 15 years before all that work is completed. But it was heartening to see that the federal government did step up and provide support for this. So that's a little bit about Catholic Extension. I hope some of these stories and examples you find interesting. I really would encourage you. We have a beautiful magazine, and we have some copies of the last few issues here. So read our magazine, follow us on Facebook or Instagram. A lot of our stories, some of the stories that I've shared with you today, we share through regular posts on Facebook and Instagram. And you can visit catholicextension.org is our website. So as our President, Father Walls, said best, every Catholic in the United States is called upon to be involved in Catholic Extension Society, and we are never better than when we see the face of the Lord. So thank you all very much for listening this morning, and I appreciate this opportunity very much.